Girl, I've been calling you. It's time for Bible study. You want to join me? Do Bible study with me. So for my Bible study, I'm in Matthew chapter 17. And let me first tell you, I got a new Bible. If you know, you know. When I tell you, it eats down. I'm excited. Let's get into it. Let me try to hide my hairline because it's so about to come out. But anywho, so we're looking at Matthew chapter 17. And it starts off so good. Now, we ended chapter 16 where Jesus is telling the disciples what they have to do in order to keep following God. They have to take their cross up and go. And we understand that's a daily thing for us as Christians. Take up your cross and follow God. We know that. Well, we know that now, right? Okay, cool. So anywho, in chapter 17, it starts off where after 6 days, Jesus only took 3 of his disciples. He took Peter, James, and John, his brother, and led them on a high mountain, okay? But what happened on that mountain, baby, gets you all the way together. So on this high mountain, Jesus is transformed. He is glowing. His clothes are white. And John, James, and Peter are experiencing all this miraculous moment. And even in this moment, they see something even more miraculous. We have Moses and Elijah who appear before Jesus, and Peter, James, and John are experiencing this. Honestly, I probably would have been stuck, my mouth mute, quiet, eyes big, like literally, I probably would have been like, what's happening? This miraculous moment, Peter had the right idea, but he had the wrong timing, because during this miraculous moment, Peter was like, listen, Jesus, this is dope. Listen, do you want me to make a statue? Do you want me to make a tabernacle for you, Moses, and Elijah right here, right now? I'm gonna go get the materials. I'm gonna come back. While he was yet speaking, God had a call from the ceiling. God was like, listen, bro, calm it down. He said, listen, this is my son who I am well pleased. Hear him out. I need you put a zip on it, Peter. I get it, because Peter wanted to build something to commemorate these memories, right? But this wasn't that time. This was a time for worship and to be honest, I have been there too. Have you? Think about it. Even in church, sometimes I'll be in church and I'll be distracted. I'm being honest with you. I think I have a level of ADHD that is not diagnosed. Because I literally be in church sometimes, and honestly, I'm looking around while the music is playing. I'm looking around, I'm looking at outfits and hairstyles. I'm like, oh, her hair is cute. I wonder if I could rock that hairstyle. Now, this is all going in my mind. Oh, her outfit is cute. I wonder what she had compared. Honestly, there's been times where I'm supposed to be worshiping and my mind is going everywhere else. Now, while that might not relate specifically to the situation of Peter, I think we can all take a note. When it's time to worship, stop and worship. Keep your mind focused on the moment and the objective of the moment, to worship, to be in awe. Jesus is showing himself to you. Wow. When Jesus is showing himself to you, let that man cook. Talk about Moses and Elijah, because this whole interaction is dope too. Remember, they appeared in front of Jesus and in front of James, Peter, and John, right? So they appeared in front of all of them, but let's talk about their significance. So we have Moses, who is appearing, and he is a representation of the Old Testament. And don't forget in Exodus, where when Moses was delivered the Old Testament from God, he appeared as a glow too. You remember that? Do you remember that? So anywho, Moses is equated to the Old Testament. And then you have Elijah, who represents the newer prophets. He represents the New Testament. He represents everything that the New Testament is coming from and the prophets that are to come. I'm excited. You got to go back and read it for yourself, because I don't want to miss anything. But y'all, I'm just like in awe of chapter 17. So I'm so sorry. I'm going to speak a little bit faster. I don't have a lot of time, but go back and read it for yourself, though, so you can see what God is trying to reveal for you in this. Now, just as a small little recap, let me keep going. So on this mountain, the disciples are scared whenever God speaks out from heaven. Whoa, they're scared. Jesus tells them, don't be afraid. Now, there's some important things to note from this specific interaction here, but I don't want to miss anything, so go back and read it for yourself. But when they are about to come down from the mountain, Jesus tells the disciples something really important. He says, don't share this with anybody. Now, for us, that is important. And the reason why that's important is because sometimes God will implant something in you for you not to share, for just you, because he knows you're not ready yet. And if we look at the past interactions with the disciples, they weren't necessarily ready. And we'll see some more of that in chapter 17, because their faith was still working. They were still trying to figure out the relationship with God. They knew he was the Messiah. They knew Jesus was the Messiah, but there's still so much in that Jesus needed them to hold still until it was ready to be released. And we see another example of how the disciples were not prepared. As you go deeper into chapter 17, we're going to look around verse 14, when a man comes up to Jesus when they come down from the mountain. He's like, listen, my son, is having seizures. I need you to save them. I took my son to your other disciples. They couldn't do it. I need your help. And Jesus is kind of upset right now because he spent all this time with the disciples and they still can't do it. But the reason why they can't do it is not because of God. The reason why they can't do it is because of them. He corrects them, which he corrects us all the time. If you look at chapter 17, verse 20, where Jesus says, it's because of your unbelief that you cannot heal this man. He said, I assure you, if you had the faith of a mustard seed, then you'll be able to do this. And I wonder if the disciples, while Jesus and James and Peter and John were on the mountain, if the other disciples were trying to heal that little boy with their own strength, and not the strength of God. I can fully relate to this, honestly. So no shades towards the disciples because I completely get it. I am a person where I feel like I can do it on my own. And I call myself hyper independent, honestly. God's working on it with me. God's working on me. But I wonder if, you know, just like myself, how I may go into situations and think I can handle it by my own strength, but forget to tap into the strength of God because my power comes from him and not from myself. If this is what was occurring with the disciples while Jesus was on the mountain, they were trying to heal this little boy. If they were thinking that, okay, I spent all this time with Jesus. I did my Bible studies. I'm on chapter 17. I should be able to heal this man. I should be able to heal this little boy's son on my own without reaching out to God first and seeking him and seeking the strength from God and having the faith to do it on your own. I just wonder, is it just me? Jesus says something so important to them that I don't want to miss, which is in verse 21, where he says, this is the type of faith that is not done without fasting and prayer. You think it's not important for you to fast as a Christian? Baby, it is so important. Denying pieces of yourself for the opportunity to get closer to your Father, it's important. You think talking to God on a daily basis ain't important? Stink a butt. It's the most important thing. Good morning, Lord. How are you? What is my assignment for the day, God? How should I operate? God, help me wring out my sins. God, allow me to follow in your footsteps and show me how to do it. I cannot wait to dive into your word. If this means that you are denying yourself breakfast until you get into your word, do what you got to do. If this means that you are charging your phone in the bathroom, so that way when you wake up first thing in the morning, you grab your Bible instead of TikTok, whatever you got to do. So much, and I have so little time, but let me put together a couple other things. So the interaction between Moses, Elijah, and Jesus was so important. Fellowship is so important. It is so important. You have Moses and Elijah and Jesus on the mountain talking. Fellowship is important. Surround yourself by people who don't gossip, but talk about God. And even more so, if you look at verse 10, where the disciples are asking Jesus, they said, listen, I know you're the Messiah. Basically, this is what they're, I know you're the Messiah, but why is everybody saying that Elijah is going to come before the Messiah? And Jesus has to help them out with this one too. Into my new Bible, it gives even more information. It says, based on Malachi chapter 4, verse 5-6, the teachers of the Old Testament law believed that Elijah must appear before the Messiah would appear. Jesus was referring to John the Baptist, not the Old Testament prophet Elijah. John the Baptist took Elijah's prophetic role, boldly confronting sin, particularly the sinful lifestyles and abuses of the political and religious leaders, and pointing people to God. Example in chapter 17, verse 20, where it talks about just having the faith of a mustard seed that can move mountains, is a great example for us to turn your eyes away from the mountain that you're facing, away from the struggles that you're facing, and instead turn them to Jesus. Focus on God. Focus on him. A good perspective when you're going through something. Take your mind off of the struggle and fix it towards Jesus. You hear me? And if you look at verse 24, we have the example where Peter is asking Jesus about paying these taxes. And Jesus is like, listen, I'm going to take care of the taxes for you and I. But what I need you to do is go out there, catch a fish. I'm going to have the money inside of the fish. While Jesus supplied the money and took care of the taxes, Peter still had to do some work. And this reminds me of the faith without works is dead. You got to put in some work. Disciples spent 3 years walking side by side with Jesus and they still had questions. What does this tell us today? It's okay to still have questions. Dive into your word. Make sure before you get into your word, you pray and you talk to God about what he's trying to reveal to you. And listen, I'm going to talk to you next time. But what I want you to do is let me know what verses stood out to you. I cannot wait to hear from you and I will talk to you next time. Bye, y'all.